And for those of you sitting on the floor, it's highly critical that you see each and every slide, because what we plan to do is literally read word for word the bullets on the slide. So
that wasn't in my contract.
I sent you a revision late last night.
Yeah, but you used Exchange, so I didn't get it. Was that on-prem or a cloud? Oh, you must have used cloud. That's the reason why I didn't get it. You see, if I had used on-prem, I would have got it. It's 9 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock.
It is indeed.
Just letting you know.
It is indeed. Well, welcome. Good morning.
That was pathetic.
Yeah.
It is the first session, though. First session on the first day of sessions. We'll give you a break. So welcome to the debate, the top 10 reasons, the blah, 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 Exchange Online on-prem. That's why we're all here today.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Eloquent.
We're starting out with detail.
What can you expect from marketing?
Speaking of marketing, my name is Steve Kahn, and I'm Senior Product Marketing Manager for Exchange On-Premises and Exchange Online, so I win either way. Yep. We're not about winners and losers here. Sadly, it's not about me here. It's about you. In the Exchange team, in our community of Exchange MVPs, we get a set of questions that tend to recur. Questions, scenarios, concerns, issues. I've got this particular set of mailboxes on premises with Exchange. Should I move them to the cloud? Or that particular set of mailboxes, should they go to Exchange Online? And rather than say yes, we thought it would be better to have a spirited debate, give you both sides of the argument, let you make up your own minds. All right, we fortuitously, it seems that there was a debate last night, some sort of debate. So I'm sure you're all accustomed to how debates work. Right, so we won't go through the scoring. Everybody's familiar with debate scoring. Good. My other role besides keeping score and keeping time is as a moderator. We have a panelist here from England and a panelist from Ireland. I'm sure you're all well aware there is a long and storied history of civil discussion, of decorum.
800 years of oppression.
And then you gave us Sinead O'Connor.
And
yeah, we gave
mutual
you
respect.
And a famine of potatoes.
No, you gave us the famine of potatoes.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, deep respect. So they told me my role as moderator would be quite simple. So with that, let me turn it over to Greg Taylor to introduce Tony Redmond.
Thank you, Steve. Good
And
morning,
you have
everyone.
The clicker, Tree.
Yeah, let's hit the button. Here we go. All right, so we thought it might be more interesting to introduce each other. So my friend Tony Redmond, we've actually known each other for
a long time.
Quite a long time now. And I knew Tony when he was back at HP. And since his exit from a real job, he's been spending his time writing books and blogs and being a general commentator. And he's a very influential voice in the community, as we know. He's the lead author on the Office 365 for IT Pros book. If you're lucky, you can get one that he hasn't signed. They're really quite valuable. He tweets incessantly, which for somebody of his seniority is quite an impressive feat. I'm pretty sure you'll agree. And after, does he say 35 years of doing email?
Yeah.
Wow, that is some time. He still hasn't yet figured it out, and so we're still having this debate. But Tony Redmond.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
I've moved you on.
So the Englishman behind me, Greg Taylor. The only thing that needs to be said about him is that A, he ran the most expensive training program known to man in the Exchange Ranger, our certified architect program, which is nice. He doesn't tweet except when he's provoked, but it's easy to provoke him, so that means he tweets a lot. And this thing, he's fascinated. He is absolutely fascinated by the rear orifice of elephants. Every single technical discussion that this man has been engaged in can be reduced to the ability of large mammals to excrete. Now just think about it. That's a pretty golden technical achievement. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Greg Taylor. So, now,
So you're in for a highly informative session. If anyone falls asleep, please, neighbors, give them a nudge and wake them back up again. So our first question that we commonly hear about moving mailboxes to Exchange Online versus on-prem. Hey, you've got Exchange 2013 or Exchange 2016. They've got everything you could possibly need, right? All this technology that Microsoft has learned. Oh, hey, it's time for the session.
Are you supposed to be somewhere else?
Yeah.
yeah, he'd like to be somewhere else.
My Uber is supposed to pick me up.
All right, okay, great.
So, great. You've got email. It works great. You've got all this technology that came out of the Microsoft Exchange Online cloud that's been brought down to on-prem to make things highly available, et cetera. Why should we move our mailboxes to Exchange Online? And for this one, the on-prem argument is from Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Steve. So we're each going to do a little piece, about 90 seconds a piece, I think, and then switch over. Tony and I are going to switch who argues for on-prem and the cloud, so it's not entirely that he's the grumpy old man and I'm the guy for the cloud. So we're going to switch it about. So here's the key thing. So can we go forward a slide, guys? Thank you very much. So as Steve said, right, everything you need in Exchange, and okay, I'll tell you what, let's start with this. Email is all you need anyway, right? Email is what it's all about. No matter what we tell you or what anybody tells you that you need SharePoint and you need all these other,
Yammer.
Email is what it really comes down to.
Yammer.
Or you're going to start heckling in the back and yammer, right? Because every single business runs their business on email. We know they do, right? They've been doing it for 20 years and they'll continue probably to do it for 20 years more. And even if the social media types are going to tell you that email is dead, long live Yammer and Twitter and Facebook and everything else, right? Quite frankly, email still lives. It's the cockroach that won't die. It really is, right? But it's a bloody useful cockroach. There's a bit of a difference, right? Now, the great thing is, because email is so essential, Exchange has been doing this for 20 years. It's the market leader in email products. Exchange has a rock-solid background. And as Steve mentioned as well, all the work that we do in Exchange Online, which runs hundreds of millions of mailboxes, ends up, for the most part, the features that are core to email end up in the on-premises version of Exchange. So really, if email is really all you care about, and if your folks in your office want to collaborate, they can use Facebook. They always do. They can IM each other. They can do that fine. But really, if you want solid email, you can run Exchange on-prem. It will still be running when I finish talking and when, hopefully for a good number of years to come. And so really, email is perfectly fine. Just stick on Exchange on-prem. That thing is going to run, and run. You don't need to do anything else. It's quite simple.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it, Tony. I mean, what else is there to say?
This man is sadly deluded. He's sadly deluded. The first thing to understand is that it's impossible to compare a cloud environment with an on-premise environment, right? It's a completely different environment, completely different development environment, completely different operational environment. It's just different. We have to get our heads around that. And the big differences that exist out there is, the first thing is, there's far more resources than you'd ever think you want to need. I mean, most CIOs are pretty penny pinching. Do you agree? They'll never give you enough servers, they'll never give you enough storage, they'll never give you enough anything. But with the cloud, because it's these guys that are paying for it, if you want to dump, say, 200 gig of PST information, go ahead. No problem. Import that puppy right in there. It's no problem. That's the first thing. Second thing is there's much better integration because they actually have to make it work. Because if they don't make it work, they don't get paid or they get taken out of their beds late at night or something like that. I don't know. But whatever the reason is, it works. Does anybody here ever remember trying to make site mailboxes work with Exchange 2013 and SharePoint 2013? And the 37 different incantations of sacred mysteries that had to be performed, including 2 ritual slittings of the wrists before they would even think about working? Well, that's what happens with on-prem when you put 2 of these fine, carefully crafted, well-engineered products together. It doesn't happen in the cloud because they actually have to make it work.
Coach.
Shh. The next thing
It's not
is
me who's
innovation.
running out of time.
Oh, yeah, well, I know. Okay. Oh, shit. Can we strike that? Next thing is innovation. There's lots of innovation. You'll love it. Come. Better security. Remember what Microsoft said yesterday? And they would never lie. Okay.
You see, Tony, you've got to be precise and concise.
Right. You've never been precise nor
No, that is
concise in
true.
your
I
life.
know.
Okay,
I
but
know.
anyway, look,
All
it's
right.
much better. Don't listen to him. Cloud is where it's at.
Thank you. So for that first question, we award Mr. Taylor 3.14 points.
Excellent.
And
For nothing. All he did was tell stories.
for Mr. Redmond, 2.97 points.
Hey, right, okay.
That's a
Carry on.
Were you scoring the debate last night?
Moving on. So the next thing that we consistently hear from people is, hey, when something happens in Office 365, we're not really sure where to go for information, right? We go to 12 Noxina, from Tony's Twitter handle, looking for information. We look for blogs. We look for people saying, hey, is there something wrong with Office 365 or Exchange Online? Right? Really difficult to find the information. So who's monitoring this stuff? How do they inform us? If I'm running my own on-premises environment, I know. I get server alerts. I know what's going on. Right? This time we're reversing the roles a bit here. And we're going to start out with Tony talking about the on-prem argument, and then Greg for the cloud.
So I'm an on-prem guy, as you all know. I would never go to the cloud. Because when you're on-prem, you're in control of your life. Nothing that ever happens without your control. You control clients and users with a little bit of difficulty, but a 2x4 helps from time to time. Networks and servers, all the apps, everything. It's yours. When something happens, you can find out what's happening, when, and go and fix it. Compare that to what happens inside Office 365. Compare the 4 last big outages that have happened. And nobody knew anything about them. When Azure went down, EOP went down, Exchange went down, Azure Active Directory went down, IMAP went down. It's horrendous. Who would ever want to go to the cloud? Stay where it's nice, safe, and secure. Stay with those rock-solid on-premises mail servers.
Well done.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Father Time. That was very helpful. Good.
I reset the timer.
All right, great. So can we skip on a little here, Steve?
Well, certainly.
All right, thank you. So as my learned friend failed to articulate, so here's the thing, that running your own Exchange servers on-prem is actually kind of hard too, and actually monitoring and finding out that things have gone wrong, often it's the users that are telling you, and usually it's the CEO who's telling you that his email doesn't work, am I right? And then you're like, I wonder what might be going on. And then you've got to go through the process of figuring out what's going on. Now, Exchange, honestly, has never been terribly good at telling you what's really going on at a broader level. We know there are third-party solutions that will let you do that. Well, then, if you're augmenting what you've already got on-prem with something else to tell you what's really going on, doesn't that sound a little bit like going to the cloud and then looking at the Service Health dashboard in the portal, for example? We'll run the Exchange servers. And not only will those Exchange servers, I mean, they're much more self-healing. We have a lot more self-healing capabilities, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, both happen. But we do the dashboard reporting for you. So you've got the Service Health dashboard and the message center.
Very badly.
All right, and any incidents that affect you are going to be reported in the Service Health dashboard.
Full of lies.
There are incidents that happen in Exchange that might not directly affect you. So why do you care about incidents that are affecting other customers? You don't. You get the information that's focused to you. Plus, any information about change is going to be reported up through there in the message center as well.
Stuff.
I don't know why he's still talking. It's kind of amazing.
But it is, it's fantasy.
So it's
Service
rare,
Health dashboard
it's
is
rare that
fantasy.
we don't have issues that show up in the Service Health dashboard that affect your tenant. It really is rare. But if you call us, which you can 24/7, he's fallen asleep. It's nap time for Tony over
Can we
here.
get a fact?
Right?
Is somebody doing a fact check on this?
If you tell us there's an issue and we verify it, it goes up on the Service Health dashboard as well. Now, the big question is always is what happens if the issue is the Service Health dashboard? Well, we've even got an answer for that too. And the answer for that is we've got the emergency broadcast system. And also, if you go to the session later today, you're going to find out about another approach that
Okay,
the
get
team who
off the
run the
stage.
service
Get off
health
the stage.
dashboard can use
You
to tell you
failed.
what is going
You
on.
failed. You failed. You lost.
Well, we're one each then.
All right, we're one each.
All right.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I need to assign the scores. So, from Mr. Redmond, 22.1
22.
22.
points.
That's
Okay,
all right.
very precise.
From Mr. Taylor,
0.
22 dead even.
Oh, all right. Okay.
For fantasy.
The next thing that we hear from some customers, looking at Exchange Online versus Exchange on premises, is this concept of the Office graph, this base level of diving into information about your users, their mailboxes, their activities, the telemetry that gets fed back to Microsoft. It sounds a little bit like Big Brother. It sounds a little scary, right? How can I make sure, Microsoft, that you guys aren't looking at the actual contents of the emails coming through, not just the subject line or the sender or the date and time and such? And for this one, Mr. Redmond will again be our on-premises augment.
Thank you. This section of the broadcast is sponsored by Google. So clearly, none of us want to have any of this kind of these signals. You know, they gather 42 different types of signals at the last count about everything you do inside Office 365. Who needs that information? I mean, do you need to know that your users are scheduling this type of meeting and that type of meeting? What you really need to know is whether or not your users are going to asleep during meetings, right? And Office 365 doesn't yet have a probe to measure that in user behavior. So you don't need this kind of stuff. It is mildly interesting. I am mildly interested in knowing how much mail I send. Mildly. But you know what? That feeling passes within 22 nanoseconds. And after that, these analytics, there's so much hogwash. You don't need them. And anyway, if you're really interested in going back to the 1950s, and clipboards and stopwatches and measuring people what they do in time and motion studies, all of the information that's actually in Delve Analytics is right there in message headers and calendar meeting requests. If you want to go and get it, go get it. But you can get it on-prem. So why move from this beautiful platform?
Well, what my leprechaun-loving friend is failing to grasp
That's
here.
fighting talk right there.
We said anything
Have you
goes,
ever
Tony. Do you
grasped
remember?
a leprechaun?
So here's
Would you even know what a leprechaun looks like?
Well, actually, yeah, no, let's not go there. Right. He's just distracting me because the thing is, the information that's gathered here is actually really useful, and it particularly is really useful. This is perhaps a personal feeling.
Do you use it?
I do use it.
You do?
It's very useful to find out what other people are involved in and working on. Now, when you're a small organization, such as Tony, right, his small business that he has, not small-minded, I said small organization. When in a small organization, he knows what everybody's doing. He knows because he's a micromanager and he loves to know what everybody's doing. In a large organization like Microsoft, there is a really good chance that there are many people working on the same problem. That is absolutely true, right? If you're in a large organization, I'm pretty sure you probably feel it too. And so the tools that are available in Delve Analytics and that allow users to see what other users that they're connected to are working on actually really helps large organizations with efficiency and rationalization. So that's a real good benefit of this. Now, it's not just that you can see how many emails people send, it's how people interact. Large organizations find that kind of data particularly useful, really useful information to see how teams are working together or failing to work together. But it's not just the data that's in there is useful as tracking what people do. There are companies that are building applications that are leveraging the data and the connections that are going on inside large organizations to build apps and workflow that allows the data to be pulled from different sources, all of the different data, all the different signals that Tony mentions coming from all of the different workloads across 365 can actually help companies build really smart apps. I'm not going to list any by name, but if you basically, the link at the bottom there's a whole raft of companies that are building really innovative apps based on the data that those signals are generating.
Perfect.
There you go. It was, thank you. That's great.
Totally unconvincing, though. Marketing
Well done,
BS.
gentlemen. Well done. To Gryffindor, 25 points, and to Slytherin, negative 14 points.
Hey, who was who?
I don't know. I'm not the slimy one anyway.
If you guys don't know, I'm not going to tell you.
All right.
All right, our next thing that we hear consistently is, Microsoft, you guys don't take backups. This is my user's email. It's really important when the CEO says, oh, I think I deleted an email a couple of months ago that I need, right? You have to be able to go back to backups and restore that. So what happens if we get that, or if we get it by ransomware and somebody's mailbox is locked up? We want to be able to go back in time and restore. So how do we respond to that? I will start out with Mr. Redmond for the argument for on-prem.
Thank you so much. So, there's no doubt that Microsoft makes a big thing about native data protection inside Office 365, inside Exchange Online, and there's no doubt that they do all the right things, all the things you would do on premises if you were to adopt this approach. They have multiple database copies, they use lag database copies, they have single item retention. It's all very, very nice. However, sometimes you need the warm comfort of a nice backup. Just sometimes you do. And it's those times when your auditors come in and say, we need this. And auditors are not very understanding people. They don't take humor well, and they just want to see that backup. And they want to see a backup at a point in time, maybe 6 months ago when something was happening. And that's the kind of thing when you need a backup. And you just don't have it in the cloud. Another thing that strikes me is that some of these new applications that are coming along, like Office 365 groups, right? Everybody gets very excited about them in collaboration. But you know what? If you delete an Office 365 group, it goes. Now, there is no soft delete. It is a hard delete. So a little administrator error, not that there would ever be in the ranks of the skilled IT professionals assembled here. But if you just ran a PowerShell commandlet and did it wrong, bang, the data is gone. Bang. And that's why you need backups.
Thank you.
All right, so I actually know somebody who can answer this better than me. Can I phone a friend?
Yeah, phone a friend.
check the rules.
Have you a friend? Have you any friends?
Yes, you can.
Apart from
phone a friend.
me
Just
and the leprechaun.
somebody's phone ringing.
Oh, it's the gnome. Where is he? Where's the gnome?
Hey Ross, how you doing? You're watching a Scotsman on stage. Yeah, no, he's not Scottish, honestly. I know he sounds like it, but
I think
listen,
he's
any
talking about
chance,
you.
because you know more about this one than I do, any chance you would mind just taking the mic and having a go at this one for me? Because you guys, thanks, man. He's Ross Smith, ladies and gentlemen, who's going to...
Hello
Beat
there.
that, Tony. Sure.
Sit on a box.
If you call me a Scotsman,
How did you know I wasn't referring to Greg?
Yeah.
because he wouldn't look good in a kilt.
Yeah, he's more
Actually,
Australian.
I would look good in a kilt. I have awesome legs. Thank you very much.
All right.
Anyway, all right.
So
Ross,
let's go
please.
with this, right? What was the question?
Question was
Does Greg look
Why-
well in a kilt?
why we don't need to take online backups and store a whole bunch of tapes for Exchange Online.
Ah, okay. So why do we not need backups anymore? Well, first of all, we have native data protection. How many know what native data protection is? All of you should have raised your hands.
Yeah.
Bad.
Don't.
All right, so I won't go through the hour lecture of native data protection, but suffice it to say we have multiple database copies, so we're protected from server failures, hardware failures, data center failures, physical corruption. I don't know if I'm echoing from that thing or not. Logical corruption with lag copies, and so forth. In fact, in certain regions, we actually have the database copies distributed across 4 data centers as opposed to just 2 data centers. So we're very protected in terms of any sort of failure scenario. We also have technologies like in-place hold to ensure that data, when it's deleted, is not actually deleted. It's maintained, controlled, it's even versioned so that edits are protected. And in fact, if you have in-place hold technologies enabled across the platform, when you actually delete a user and have his mailbox deleted, it doesn't go in a soft deleted state in Exchange Online. It goes into an inactive state so that the data is preserved for the lifetime that the hold is in place, so that that data is continued to be discoverable, unlike on-prem where when you delete the user mailbox, it's gone within the 30 days or less, depending on how you configured mailbox deletions. We also have a number of controls around ensuring destructive commandlets are not accessible. No one at Microsoft has standing admin access, first of all. Any attempt to gain access to customer-related data goes through a very controlled process, what we refer to as lockbox. And even this year, we released customer lockbox so that you guys can be in that loop and make the final decision of whether we gain access or not. And as tenant administrators, you can remove commandlets like remove mailbox and the like from admins so that they don't actually make those mistakes. And then finally, there was a thing around malware. Fear of malware is not a reason to take a backup. Having a great anti-malware solution is the answer to protect against malware and ransomware. And that's Exchange Online protection. We have the ability to have multi-layered defense with multiple definition files. We have the ability to use advanced threat protection to deal with safe links to ensure that the suspicious links are reduced from getting to the user's inbox, and we can even inspect, analyze, and detonate attachments. I love that word, detonate. I think that's pretty cool that we use that. I don't know how marketing allowed that one. And then finally, we even have this new feature that we just released known as zero-hour auto purge, which will go in after a message has been delivered and remove it if it is indeed determined to be malware. So that's why we no longer need backups.
What he said.
Still hasn't answered the question.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
So,
It's good to have good friends.
yes, indeed, indeed. So for the on-prem answer, 57 points.
Very good.
For the cloud answer, 29 points, but there were two of you, so that's 29 each, 58 points.
I think,
Oh, very good.
I think you have to deduct it because you have to put in some sort of penalty because he phoned a friend.
Moving on. The next thing that we hear quite frequently in this discussion of on-prem or online is, hey, we've got this entire ecosystem of workflow and technologies built around email, built around our on-premises email. How do we know we can recreate that in Exchange Online, right? How do we know that our SAP system, which is sending notifications, or our Oracle PO system and AP, AR system, which is sending notifications and workflows, how do we know that that's going to work correctly in Exchange Online? And we seem to be in a pattern here. It seems that Tony is once again our on-prem champion. So here we go.
So over 20 years, or 20 years ago when Exchange started out, the landscape was pretty bleak. But over the last 20 years, there's been a ton of innovation around Exchange and indeed around SharePoint that didn't come from Microsoft. It came from third parties who went out there and built solutions that really made sense for companies. And those solutions are anything from monitoring of Exchange, monitoring the network, whatever, backups, security, even down to things like emails, applying email signatures. I mean, it surprises me that there are still so many companies out there selling email signature software, but that's just a factor of the way the ecosystem works. And it's absolutely fantastic. But the thing about Exchange Online, the thing about Office 365 in general, despite the fact that they have APIs, Microsoft has published a nice set of APIs. They, in some respect, are killing innovation within the third-party community because you can't go and install stuff on servers. And that's logical. But it just means that the ecosystem at the moment is not as big, it's not as broad, it's not as diverse, it's not as useful as exists with Exchange on-prem. And I think that's a pity. I think it's a pity for the community, I think it's a pity for the ecosystem, and I think it's just something that Microsoft has got to watch, because if they're in danger here of killing the golden goose if they don't foster innovation, they don't foster that third-party ecosystem, and they just don't make it easier for people to choose the solutions that they want.
Well, thanks to the Irish Gandalf for that one. That was very helpful. No, so I've got a whole raft of these for Tony. Don't worry. So one of the other reasons why these third-party solutions have some of them, and Tony mentions, the email disclaimer types and so on, is Exchange has essentially built most of the functionality that's come from those into the product over a number of years. Right? There are many features and functions that these third parties were providing which you can do natively. And so, given a choice, would you rather do it natively out of the box, included in the price of Exchange, or would you rather bolt on a bunch of third-party add-ons? And third-party add-ons have, at times, from some vendors, certainly, some solutions have been released have been problematic. Right? The number of cases that get raised because of transport being messed up because some transport agent or other is messing around with mail flow, we see a ton of those. We used to see a ton of those. We see less of them now. And that's because we've built that technology into the product. But for those apps that still provide value adds, and there's still plenty of them and some great ones too, the majority of them, if they were written by smart, forward-thinking professional companies, they're already using APIs and interfaces they're not legacy APIs, but they're keeping up with times, right? So they're using auto-discover and web services and OAuth and REST and so on, and Graph and all of the new stuff that's coming into 365. And so many of these applications may actually already work when your mailbox or the target mailboxes you're acting against are in the cloud anyway. So you might not even have to change the app. The whole thing might just work. You've got to remember that really O365 isn't just a collection of workloads, Exchange, SharePoint, I can't say the Y word, and a bunch of others, right? But it's more of a platform. It really is a development platform, and there's a rich raft of functionality, and some of that's ending up in on-prem. If you saw the blog post the other day, the REST API is coming to Exchange 2016 CU3. So we are absolutely keen on ensuring that application developers can build against Exchange and access data in a consistent way, whether a mailbox is on-prem or in the cloud. And the other thing as well is a lot of the apps that people are accustomed to using many of these companies have already released O365 compatible versions into the Azure App Store. So the apps that you might be using on-prem and spending all that time integrating into your complicated systems on-prem, there may already be a cloud-ready version in the Azure App Store that you can just transition to. So it really isn't about snuffing out innovation at all. It's about changing the application to work against the cloud using the APIs we have published and available and that they can work against, rather than getting rid of the applications. Ka-ching.
Ka-ching
So
yourself.
for this one, we went to a modified Stableford scoring system.
Oh,
Yes.
what is that?
It's something I just made up.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for Tony, we went on the quality of the answer, 62 points. For Greg, 1 point for every 10 words,
I lost that one.
62 points.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay, so the next thing that we hear. Who remembers when mailboxes were a bit smaller than they are today, right? The company that I left Microsoft to go to and then came back from, we had 50 megabytes, right? Which is great for about 2004, not so good for 2014. So our mailboxes in Exchange Online are a bit more generous than that. Matter of fact, 50 gigabytes of storage size. Don't you really encourage your users to practice bad email hygiene? If you just let them store anything and everything 50 gigs, isn't that just kind of too much? So for this one, we are reversing things. Greg will start out with the argument for remaining on premises, and Tony will discuss the cloud. And there we go.
Well, sometimes too big is too big, right? And the challenge is those large mailboxes can be something of a liability. This is what I hear customers telling me. right? They're saying if I have a huge mailbox, then I've got this whole big compliance issue and it takes me tons of time to find what I need and blah, 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 blah. So the reality is many of these customers that I talk to actually feel that by keeping users' mailboxes to a reasonable amount, you know, maybe 100 meg, something along those lines these days. I'm kidding, it's not really that much, okay? Although we do have some really interesting customers who do have really tiny mailboxes still because of the locations where they are. So that could be another good reason as well, because of the type of customer or industry they're in. But, you know, quite often they find that most of their mailbox is filled up with crap anyway. And so what's one good way of getting all of the social media crap and cat videos out of email? And that's keep the mailbox size nice and small. Let's leave it for work, let's not mess around. Okay, so there's one good reason for it. Now, the other thing that my customers say as well is they have a compliance solution, and they have many of these disconnected, heterogeneous systems. And so, you know, stuffing everything into one big mailbox solves only really part of the problem, because you could argue that it's great for compliance, and Microsoft does. And it is, but what if you've got many, many connected systems and you have a compliance solution that allows you to scan across the whole lot in one go? Shoving everything in the mailbox isn't necessarily a magic answer to compliance. And here's the other thing too. If I really want large mailboxes, you know, I mean, I can do it myself, right? I mean, I don't need to go online to get a 50 gig mailbox. If I want to stay on-prem, I can have a 50 gig mailbox and I can have a 500 gig mailbox. Disks are cheap anyway, right? It was kind of funny, I put here as well, as my policy requires I keep it for a certain number of years. I had a customer tell me once that they had to keep backups for 200 years. I swear that is true. We have to keep backups for 200 years. And I went, really? How are you gonna test that? Where are the tape drives for that? The big spinny tapes that you're gonna need for all of that stuff. Listen, large mailboxes are great, but they're not really important. And sometimes they can be a bit of a liability for some organizations as well.
Well said.
Thank you, Tony. Over to you.
Yes. Well, thank you. So now that I'm back on the dark side of the cloud, which is nice, comfort feeling, I mean, the thing about it is, it's just fantastic to have the ability to store everything in the cloud so it's available all the time on all my devices anywhere. I don't have to worry about retention. I don't have to worry about cleaning out my mailboxes. I don't have to worry about deleting stuff so that new mail can arrive. It's just a feeling of pure, unadulterated, and adult bliss.
Really?
Yes, it's the kind of stuff that you would never understand because you're a warped kind of leprechaun hater.
I said you were a leprechaun lover. I didn't say I hated them.
The biggest thing is we have now a chance to eradicate the world's most insecure, the world's most horrible, the world's most fallible file system known to man, the PST. We can get rid of these suckers. And you can get rid of those suckers by importing them into Office 365 and building out those big mailboxes and building out those big archive mailboxes in particular. The other thing we can do is get rid of those complex, costly, and inefficient legacy email archive servers. Not going to mention any of them by name. But why do you want that expense? When Microsoft has bought scabs of disk space, put it in all these huge data centers, and is making that storage available to you. Go out there, bring that data home. Bring it home. Import it. Get rid of PSTs, get rid of legacy email archives, and let your users get on with real work without having to spend all their time figuring out where data is, where stubs are, what stubs are, how to use stubs, all that sort of stuff. I mean, this is just a different environment. I said that at the start. So just bring all that data in, make it nice and comfortable, and leave it there for the 200 years, because you might be able to get it, or at least Microsoft or whatever Microsoft 2000 and whatever million will be able to get it back out for you. And compliance, of course, is so much easier once all the data is there.
Super.
For Ireland.
Hey, yeah, for Ireland.
The score, that answer, 108 to 107.
Very good.
I'm not saying who. You'd be very careful about this.
Oh, I didn't actually track
that's okay.
that.
Okay.
Sorry. The next thing we hear, actually, I heard this one just last week in an executive briefing. Hey, we have some users that are not in New York City or London or Hong Kong. They may not have the best internet connectivity. They're pretty far flung. Internet-based data is not necessarily going to work that well for us, is it? The argument for on-prem, Mr. Taylor.
Well, I didn't know you were going to say you actually had a customer at an executive briefing center tell you this last week.
Yes,
I'm
I
done,
did.
Right? I mean, so it's actually, this has always been the biggest Achilles heel, right? That if your data is somewhere else, and whether it's our cloud or some remote data center, it's always that connectivity which is the problem. Now, admittedly, connectivity has improved in many metropolitan areas and across, industrialized and westernized, modernized countries and continents, right? But there are still parts of the world where data is expensive, unreliable connections, and so on. I used to work with a customer in the who have platforms in the North Sea, and they used to use something called a tropospheric scatter link. That is awesome. That's where they bounce the signal off the sea and the atmosphere to get from the platform back to land. I'm not kidding, that's true. When the weather's rough, it's not a very good connection. You're going to put their mailbox in the cloud, are you, Tony? I don't think so. It's not going to work terribly well for them. So there are also disconnected scenarios. We have customers who run Exchange Server on submarines and in space, and a whole bunch of stuff. Actually, I'm not sure they run Exchange in space, but they definitely run Outlook. It's kind of interesting. We have that as a customer to deal with sometimes. But if your mailbox is going to be stuck in the cloud and you're at the other end of a fairly flaky network link, then your experience is going to be less than perfect, let's face it, right? So the other challenge you have as well is when that connection, sometimes even if you have a decent connection, you have a problem with the connection. And it can be difficult to tell sometimes whether the problem is us or whether the problem is you or it's somewhere in the middle. And more often than not, that phrase, the last mile, is always the tricky one, right? We don't control that last mile from your internet service provider back to you. And we see a ton of issues, connectivity issues, which come down to that. We are very resilient. We have a huge investment in our data centers and network technology, but if the last mile is your crappy ISP and your ISP does something stupid, you're cut off from us. And that can be a problem that we can't help you fix necessarily, although we do work with ISPs. Sorry, I'm trying to argue for staying on-prem, cloud, whichever, where's my brain? But here's the other thing as well. So WAN accelerators, if you really do have a problem, there are plenty of vendors who'll sell you WAN accelerator products. And we actually, one of the problems that you have with 365 is they can actually be the problem itself. I get involved in escalations where the problems really come down to networking. And more often than not, the problem is with our customers' networking equipment, networking devices. You ask the question, what's sitting between Outlook and your internet egress point? And say, nothing. Then you ask the question again. So there's nothing in there, like some kind of WAN accelerator, right? Well, I mean, there is this thing that we've got here that does this, this, and this. And you're like, aha. So sometimes, it's the connectivity which is the challenge. And, when you stay on-prem, you eliminate that from the equation. You'll have other problems, but you certainly can eliminate the network connectivity from being one of them. Bang on.
Mr. Redmond.
There he goes again, just putting out these idle points, don't mean anything. The simple fact is that I've been using Office 365 and Exchange Online since the day Microsoft announced it in June 2011. And during that time, I think I've used it in possibly 28 different countries around the world, using a variety of connections, anything from a Linux-powered browser on a television set in Abu Dhabi, all the way around to really high-speed internet in various hotels. And I know that's difficult to understand, high-speed internet in hotels, but it sometimes happens. The point is, I can't think of a single time in that 5.5 years when I have not been able to connect. I might not have been able to connect with Outlook, because Outlook, let's face it, at times, is a fat pig when it comes to the network. But I have always been able to connect with either ActiveSync, which is pretty lightweight and designed to work over HTTP connections, extended HTTP connections, our Outlook web app, OWA. I've always been able to connect. So I don't understand this theory that, oh, you know, we're going to be in places where I can't connect. Because I've actually gone to some of those places, and I've been able to connect. And then been able to connect and do work and get stuff done. And that's the true test. Microsoft, to their credit, have deployed hundreds and nearly thousands now of local network connection points so that data gets to their fiber network, their data center network, as quickly as possible and with the least number of hops as possible. And that network has been built out over the last couple of years. So, you know, a couple of years ago, yeah, there might have been at times where you're saying, oh, this is taking a little bit longer than it should do, but now it doesn't. So that's pretty good. And as well as that, there are separate networks out there, content delivery networks. So if you're going to do something like Office 365 video, it'll work just fine. No real problems at all. So the bottom line from my perspective, and it goes back to personal experience. After traveling around the world for 5.5 years and using Office 365 everywhere, it just works. Now, I will say, I have not been in a submarine and I have not been in space. So I'll take those two edge cases off the table.
I'd like to
and I
shoot
will
you
give them
into
to Mr. Taylor. If you're in a submarine, you need on-prem. If you're in space, you need on-prem. Everywhere else, you need Office 365.
Who's for shooting Tony into space to find out?
I'll go. I always wanted to be an astronaut, but my eyes let me down. And then the rest of my body let me down.
Very well spoken on both sides. For Greg, 27 points. For Tony, the square root of 875 points.
Very good.
Yes, excellent. Our next question has all to do, again, with that big brother aspect, right? I don't trust Microsoft with my data. How do I know you're using this Delve stuff, that you're not taking a look at things? You're not selling it out to, let's say, a government agency that might want to look at it, such. How can I be sure I can trust you? I know where my data is with on-prem. So for this one, we are reversing roles again, and Mr. Redmond, the on-prem argument.
Well, of course, on-prem is the best platform for everything, including connectivity, but most especially for security and privacy, because you control everything. You really do. You have total control over the databases, you have total control over the servers, your network, the clients, users, whatever. So that's just a wonderful place to be. Security and privacy are really critical to an email server. In fact, they're critical to any IT system, because you know what? Once it's compromised, losers lose faith. The organization loses faith. Everybody loses faith. And it can be just a horrible thing to happen, both for the external reputation of the company and also for the internal reputation of the IT department. So this is something we really, really, really need to take seriously. At the end of the day, no matter how many people spin it, there are always going to be some Microsoft employees who can get to your data. It has to be. You know, let's be logical. And sure, there are the whole lockbox things in place, but at the end of the day, there's that nagging feeling. And there's that nagging feeling that maybe even though they very successfully defended the case in Ireland, where Microsoft was forced to say no to the US government about access to email, sometimes they're going to be forced to do it. And they'll give it over. And that's not good. I don't like that very much. So overall, I think, you know what? On-premises just gives you that control. It gives you the privacy, gives you the security, gives you the ability to have total access to all of your data and to retain that access under your control. And that is the best security blanket of them all. If you want to use some of the stuff that's available on out there on the cloud, like Exchange Online Protection, go for it. If you want to do that. But me, I'm back to those nice, comfortable email servers on-prem. That's where my data wants to be. Mr. Taylor.
Well, our security position is obviously clear. I mean, it's comprised in these slides here, everything we've ever written. I mean, who in the room has not read every single link available? Is there anybody in the room who's read every single document on there? And there is. You? Would you mind summarizing it for us?
In words and less than one syllable,
okay.
please.
Great. This gentleman's going to summarize for us. Is this on?
I'd be happy to.
All right, that's terrific.
Is it all right if I read a poem to summarize it for you?
Oh, a poem?
Oh, great.
You've written a poem?
Yes, well,
That's
Exchange
brilliant.
has been around for 20 years, and some of us are
Oh,
showing
now
our
he's
age
got
now,
Scotch
so-
Knoll. That's
Yes,
what that
so
is.
let me give you some info
I
about
thought it was
privacy.
Elvis.
Thank you. This is my real hair. Privacy, it's plain to see, is clearly on your mind. Well, rest assured your data's safe and not being mined. When you put your trust in us, we work very hard to keep it. We work day and night on security, doing things that can't be repeated by customers in their own domains, but that doesn't mean they don't have brains. It's just that given our sheer size, we've become very wise and effective with administration in each and every location. Where we have secure facilities, we've grown in our abilities to keep your data safe per our responsibilities. Microsoft is the industry leader in cloud certification and compliance because we have running data centers down to a science. We use gates, biometrics, and man traps to prevent unauthorized access, which is already very unlikely because we don't publish the addresses. It's quite a lot, the many standards we support, such as keeping your data encrypted while at rest and during transport. We take very seriously this question of security. We don't run things mysteriously, and we have operational maturity. We're compliant with standards and laws, and that's primarily because we want it to be inherent that we are absolutely transparent. Whether in the cloud or on premises, there's no need to make a fuss, because regardless of what you buy, all your data belong to us. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding about that last part. Your data belongs to you. We would never violate your trust. It's just something we wouldn't do. In fact, we have several controls that guard access to the system. We simply can't just get at your data, even if we had the ambition.
Is there some control
So
over
get
it?
moving to the cloud and join the rest of the crowd, knowing that your data is safely protected and not being collected. Use our service without being nervous that Microsoft is spying on you and all your data or doing some type of prying. Our contract with you forbids it, plus our business would be dying. If we ever violated your trust, we'd be left in the dust. So know that we're not in your documents, and you can use our service with confidence. We've been focused on trustworthy computing for more than a decade, so you can use our services without being afraid of cybercrime or malicious hackers or any threats from internal attackers. We constantly monitor the threat landscape while keeping our services running shipshape. Should the unexpected occur, we have a global team of responders with capabilities that are beyond yours.
Come on,
We
moderator.
feature the industry's most advanced security science and the industry's widest and deepest compliance because security and privacy is important to you just as it is to us. But if you still have questions after this, we're very happy to discuss.
Oh, okay, come on.
Scotch Knoll.
All right, okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have to protest. I have to protest.
What?
What? Bringing somebody along with doubtful hair. Extreme. Yeah. Well, at least mine is my own. Okay. Bringing someone along with doubtful hair to decant doggerel, which isn't very good even.
Right.
And hit people with a whole pile of different web links. That's not a response to serious issue. I mean,
awesome.
is poetry the answer to security? Is that the way Microsoft is going to protect data? By having poets at every crossroads?
Poets.
Poets.
Yes.
I'm
sure there's an acronym for poets.
I think we need somebody more rational.
Really?
Yes.
And who's that going to be then? Because it's not you.
Paul Robichaud, come on up here and help me. This man is a security man. This man is going to tell us all because he actually knows stuff and he doesn't do poetry.
Has he written? You're not written a poem then?
How can I top Scott's effort?
Yeah, you can't. So I wouldn't bother.
Although I did think that Scott was going to summarize those links and not just repeat them in his poem, but it's a good effort nonetheless. I think it's fair to say that when you consider the whole security landscape, nobody can argue that the security of on-prem exchange is untoppable. I mean, it's good enough for the Secretary of State. It should be good enough for everybody. On-prem exchange seriously gives you, complete control over everything that happens to your email, but it also gives you complete responsibility for everything that happens to your email. Microsoft's argument for a long time has been that because they are bigger and richer than you and have more facilities than you and probably smarter admins than you, that they'll do a better job securing your data than you can. And in a lot of cases, that's true. There's still cases where it makes sense to keep mail on-prem because you have to have very tight control over it. But most of those cases are cases where you want to isolate your email environment so it has as little connection to the outside world as possible. And that's kind of the opposite of what we're talking about doing in the cloud in general, unless you're in a submarine or in space. So with much respect to Scott's excellent poem, Scott, next time I need a poem for something, you're going to be the first guy I call, but the wig, not so much. You know, on-prem ultimately is going to give you the ability to control exactly what happens to your data, but it also makes you accountable and responsible for what happens to your data, and that's not something that everybody is willing to do. Tony, I just wanted you to know that purposefully, I only had one joke.
Okay.
Because, as some of you may know, Tony frequently complains about how bad my jokes are. So I decided I would save it all up for one joke, and that was it. So,
Okay.
So what's the joke?
damn it, I knew I forgot something.
Oh, there you go.
Thanks,
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. So at least that was a rational contribution to the debate.
I think that was a brilliant contribution to the debate.
It was certainly a different contribution to the debate.
And if you stay in the room right after this, Scott's doing his tips and tricks as well right after this in this room. So you might want to keep your
in
seat
poetry? Is he doing all his blooming tips and tricks in poetry?
warm. He will. He's going to do the whole thing in
Anyway, moving along. Let's keep the debate going, Mr. Moderator.
I think it's amazing that, number one, Paul just happened to be sitting in the front row
Yeah,
and
funny
was
that.
thinking about this at the time that Tony asked him, and that Scott, a poem off the top of his head.
Genius.
Right? That's amazing.
I'm always thinking about security.
There you
So
go.
I have no recourse but to award 10,000 points to each side.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I've got it.
Thank you for the one
Very
person who applauded. It's appreciated.
I've got a $20 bill for you later. So we've got just a couple more here. So in the interest of time, I will be instituting the timer again. So keep that in mind.
You got it.
So the question is, or the comment, the concern, the issue, Office 365 requires you to update constantly, right? An amazing amount of change going on. Even if you have a hybrid connection, right, you have to have the latest and greatest. So that seems like a huge amount of effort to keep up with, doesn't it? For on-premises, Mr. Redmond.
Thank you. So, I suppose everybody who reads Office blogs every day, yeah? If so, you would have seen the number of changes that are introduced inside Office 365 on a rapid and ongoing basis. In fact, in the calendar year to August 2015, Microsoft came out and very proudly said 350 changes we've introduced to Office 365 in the last year. That's a hell of a lot of change. And the point is, you have zero control. You just have to take what they give you. And you have to keep all those desktop components up to date. You have to keep your browsers up to date. If you're running hybrid, you have to keep your Exchange servers up to date. You just lose control. And that's pretty hard to give up. And it's also pretty hard to manage. Because when you think about it, whereas Microsoft is doing all the heavy lifting in the back end with the servers and the services, you have to deal with that jewel in the crown that is your user community. Those people that make your job delightful every day of their existence, right? How can you explain to users when new options appear on a daily basis? How can you explain when options disappear on a daily basis? How can you explain when they have to upgrade on a weekly basis at times? It just becomes a mess. Yes, I know it's part of the whole thing about innovation. Yes, I know it's a part of the whole thing about keeping things moving forward, introducing new features, being competitive, etc., etc. But just sometimes, it would be nice to have some control. It would be nice to take a rest. And it would be nice to avoid upgrades happening in the middle of the closing of the financial year. That would be very pleasant. Microsoft, make it so, please.
Wow, what a pipe and slippers story that one was. Poor old Tony wants to sit and just take it easy. You sit down.
I do.
Go on,
I do.
you take a seat, old boy.
Thank
There you
you,
go.
thank
All right.
you, thank you
So-
very much. Thank you very much.
So the thing is that staying on-prem requires effort too. I mean, how many companies?
as much.
How many companies have a strategy of leaving stuff until it's so
controlled.
old that it's basically unusable and runs on, you know? I mean, people refresh hardware and leave really crappy old software on it. I mean, keeping stuff up to date is hard on-prem. But there are many ways of solving that problem. All right, and many ways of automating, of automation of solving that problem, right? So, you know, a great example would be the Office click-to-run piece. So you install Office in a click-to-run format, Office will update. You do it once, and then we'll take care of, you know, Office takes care of itself. So arguing that I have to keep updating Office, you know, isn't really fair or correct even. And there are many ways you can keep your software up to date. Running with out-of-date software anyway is a security risk, a concern, a compliance concern. There are many good reasons for why you might want to keep your software up to date, not just because you want to keep connectivity to O365. I think we could all agree with that. But you know, one of the things that Tony did point out is that once you do get on board to the train, to the cloud, this train isn't stopping. There are no stations. The train will keep rolling. We have an evergreen service. It just continually is updated. There are no big bang updates like you do with an on-prem deployment. There's no figuring out how to upgrade from version 2010 Exchange to 2016 and all of the complexities around that. We take that problem away from you. But your part of the bargain is that you need to keep clients connected and updated. And there are automated systems that allow you to do that. And if you do your part, we do our part, that allows us to continue to deliver the innovation that you're paying for, frankly. The features, the innovation, the security improvements, and all of those things that you're paying for. So it's a lot harder to keep a server infrastructure upgraded than clients in many ways. I understand clients are not easy too, but there are plenty of solutions out there for keeping clients updated. And really, if your job is as an IT admin, an IT pro, that's really where you should be focusing your efforts. On 2 minutes.
He didn't address the issue of control at all. I just point that out. I mean, he just didn't. He just ignored it. He just ignored it and went on with this type of rubbish.
So the scoring
He noticed.
I listened.
for Greg, 3 to the 12th power.
Very good.
For Tony, 4 to the 11th power.
All right.
Oh,
Good.
public folder.
Oh, this
Next,
one's
we're
awesome.
talking about public folders, right? Why would you ever need anything other than public folders to collaborate, right? As many times as Microsoft has tried to kill public folders, they keep coming back, and there's a reason for that, right? So what about public folders with Exchange Online versus Exchange On-Premises? For On-Premises, Mr. Taylor.
I have nothing, right? Public folders are atrocious. I couldn't think of any good reasons why you might want to keep this stuff on-prem. So I thought I'd fill my 2 minutes with something a little more entertaining. So the bottom left is a picture of my garden. Now, I have quite a nice garden. I bought this house, nice big garden. We have a vegetable patch. That's actually one of my carrots that grew in the vegetable patch. It's quite extraordinary. I have a Yammer group at Microsoft called Greg's Grass and Trees, where we talk about grass and trees, and it is genuinely grass and trees from the garden. It's fascinating. The other set of pictures, and I'm talking fast, there's a lot to tell you, is what happened at the last... Who was at MEC in... where were we?
Austin.
Austin. Who was at MEC in Austin? Who cuddled Flat Tony or took a selfie with Flat Tony? Well, we all did. We had a great time. This was Flat Tony. It was a cardboard cutout of Tony. It was very hard to tell the difference between the two at certain points during the conference. And I have several people. There's Jeff Guillet and there's Jeff Mealiff taking photos with Tony. Tony also did far more compromising things. Where I could show you the photos separately.
Let's move that along, moving
Yeah,
along.
yeah,
moving
yeah,
along.
yeah.
Yes.
Get off the stage. You know when things are getting pathetic, when they can appeal to you with just a few silly photographs of carrots in remarkably odd shapes. I mean, that's just We can't even deal with that. Look, collaboration in the cloud is so much more than public folders. Let's get rid of public folders. Just like my other campaign to eradicate PSTs, and I'm on a campaign to eradicate public folders. This is ancient technology. Microsoft thought it was super cool when they introduced it in 1996, and they played chess games and stuff like that. Oh, my God, very soon after that, we fell out of love with public folders. You know, after you found out that an admin could, with one click, take away the entire public folder replica for an organization and replicate that change all around the organization. I mean, my gosh, this is horrible, horrible, horrible stuff. People are much more demanding now. People are absolutely more demanding. And inside the cloud, there are better instances of collaboration. Office 365 groups, I believe, is the way forward if you're into email. If you collaborate through email, if you collaborate using public folders today, go to Office 365 groups. Please, do yourself a favor. And if you want to do the large-scale kind of stuff, yeah, do Yammer. It's there. It works. And it does a good job for the kind of thing where you want a company-wide discussion about public holidays and stuff like that. But you know what? It's time. Let's eradicate the cockroaches once and for all. Let's get rid of public folders, and let's move forward into the 21st century instead of doing what Mr. Taylor would like you to do and cling on to a couple of funny photographs and the last part of the 20th century.
Tony, for a learned and thoughtful dialogue, 97 points.
We go.
Greg, for humor value, 95 points.
Close. Okay.
So, gosh, you got for just a couple of photographs.
And the last, if you've been counting out there, you realize that this is number 11.
Because we can't count.
On my microphone,
clearly.
yes. Number 11 out of the top 10 reasons. We just couldn't stop at 10. It was such a good discussion. We were having so much fun. So the last one, number 11, we think Microsoft will actually live up to its promise, and it'll continue to support Exchange 2016 until 2025. Actually, it'll spill over into 2026. So we've got 10 years of support for this version of Exchange on-premises. Why should we move until they don't support it anymore? The argument for on-premises? Greg.
Well, we do have this long support life cycle, as Steve said, right? We will continue to support Exchange for a good number of years to come. And we're a company that responds to what our customers tell us. All right, so if our customers continue to tell us that they continue to want to use Exchange, we will continue to allow them to use Exchange in whatever form they use. All right, I'll give you that. It's kind of a win-win for us in many ways, as Scott said, right? And I'm quite happy with that decision. But if you want to keep Exchange on-prem, then you can continue to do so for some years to come. We have that commitment to our customers. But you know, even if Microsoft were to say, all right, we're done with on-prem, I mean, it's not like your servers are going to suddenly stop working, is it? Let's face it. Right? Who's still running Exchange 2000 out there? I bet there's probably a few people. All right? So, or even older. We've had customers with even older software. Their stuff still runs. We talked about it way early on, which is Exchange just keeps going. And it's certainly going to be around by the time probably I give up. I'm sure there'll still be Exchange servers running. But, you know, when it does give up, is something else going to replace Exchange? I doubt it. I think email will still have a life to continue. Whether people move to the cloud, whether they move to some other, I'm not sure they'll move to some other kind of social network and some of the things here that you've got. I mean, it's always talked about, but it doesn't really happen. But Exchange, you can continue to run that thing on-prem. We would very much like you to keep it moving forward, and there's a good reason for that, because out-of-date software, as you said, is not a great thing to be running on-prem, but also by keeping it moving forward, then if at some point you do decide you want to take the jump to the cloud, you're ready to do so. Be nothing worse than trying to get to the cloud in 5 years from now if you're running Exchange 2007 on-prem. That might be a bit of a toughie. So if you want to stay on-prem, that's totally fine. Keep it moving forward, though. That would be the only request. And then you're going to be running the latest, most secure version of Exchange on-prem. If you want to move to the cloud, you're going to make your life a lot easier. Tony, take it home.
Take it home, baby. So you notice that there's no comment about a new version of Exchange. We're talking about Exchange 2016. Will there be a new version of Exchange? I don't know. On-prem. But what I do know is that it's probably time to get off, or at least make a plan to get off. Because you don't want to be the last people clinging on, do you? The last folks to leave the sinking ship? I don't think you do. I think what's more important, though, is that over the next 9 years, up to 2025, we're going to see incredible change. We talked about it earlier on. There's incredible change, incredible innovation happening inside the cloud, and that's where it's going to happen. It is not going to happen on-prem. So let's get our heads around that. What you're going to see on-prem is going to be some perfectly worthy, welcome, and really useful cumulative updates. The functionality, the new features that are going to be delivered in those updates are going to be technology that transfers from the cloud. And they, I suspect, will be operational technology. They will be technology that Microsoft needs to run the world's largest Exchange deployment. They will be technology that makes sense to bring to on-premise customers. But if you're talking about the eye candy, the stuff that excites and delights your users, and important new applications like Office 365 groups, I don't think you're going to see that kind of thing happening. And that's okay if that's what you want. If you want to have rock-solid server technology running on-premises and you want to take advantage of the cloud, that's what you're going to get. Be happy with it. But that's what you're going to get. If you want innovation, if you want that evergreen technology moving forward, you need to go to the cloud. And remember where Microsoft's eyes are. It's all mobile first, cloud first. On-premises does not feature in that slogan. There you go.
I've been keeping track of the time here. Unfortunately, I forgot to actually log the scores.
Oh.
So instead of having a debate score, we thought it might be more interesting to advance the slide, to have you guys tell us, what's it going to be? Are you going to stay on premises? Are you thinking about moving to the cloud? If you go to this site here, menti.com, and use the code listed, you can tell us, and you can see the results. It's live, real time. Go ahead and give us a vote.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's start voting now.
My head's in the cloud.
Okay,
There you go.
I'm going on-prem.
You're staying on-prem, are you? You've also got hybrid there as an option, or you've got undecided. Come on, let's. It's not difficult. You've all got mobile devices. www.menti.com. Put in the number. Okay.
One vote for
It's
customer,
an undecided
right?
group here, Rick. Gee, I'm going
Okay,
hybrid.
great. 39, 40, 41. Great. This is awesome.
Are
Okay.
we surprised that no one is undecided, that everyone has an
No,
opinion?
no. There's one poor undecided person in the...
Yeah, that might-
Counseling will be available for the undecided people later on. Just go down to the Office 365 booth and tell them that you're undecided. They'll help you.
Okay.
Drugs are available
61,
even for this condition.
79, 26. I'm not
2%,
quite sure
isn't it?
which one to vote for myself.
And that is the content for the session. There's an eval slide that you've seen and you're going to see a whole bunch of times going forward, but we don't want to take this off, so we'll leave this up here live voting. Thank you all very much for coming. Hope you appreciated it. Enjoy the rest of Ignite.
Slip on the slide. We've got one more.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, you should. We should thanks.
Yes, special thanks to Mr. Robichaux, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Schnall.
Now you can go back to the slide.
Yeah.